As I had mentioned earlier, today's edition of Parenting Today is going to be a very interesting and very enlightening one. As always, I have the CEO of LagosMums, Yetty Williams, who is here. Hi, Yetty, how's it going?
Hi, Ify. I'm doing great. And you?
Very well, thank you. We also have another guest, which I did announce earlier today. He is Mark Brooks, and he's an educational consultant. Hi, Mark. How's it going?
Hi, really well. Thanks for inviting me on the show, Ify, and it's really great to be here today. Greetings from England.
Glad to have you on the show. Our topic for today is expert advice on choosing boarding school abroad. So last week, we did have a conversation about things that parents need to bear in mind when picking a school for their kids. A very important point of conversation. And Yetty, you did share a whole lot of things and tips that parents should have in mind. One tip in particular that I loved was when you said that parents should go there themselves to see firsthand what's going on in the school, from, getting into the doors to how the kids are being, treated, how the kids are behaving and all of that. So Yetty, just take us through a few of the things that you mentioned last week when it comes to picking a school for your kids.
Yes, Ify. I know that one really stuck out to you about the unannounced and announced visits to the school. It helps you get a real sense of what's happening right behind the scenes. So some other things we talked about were, how you do your due diligence. Make sure you're asking the right kinds of questions. Make sure you're also aware, or at least have an idea, what your child's strengths are, their gifts, their talents, their interest academically, and other things as well, so that you can make sure that the school is actually going to support and raise your child based on his or her strengths. We also talked about, making sure that you don't just pick a school based on what people say. People have their own different ways of rating a school. So make sure you're asking the right questions based on what you're looking for. What else? We talked about, asking the right questions as well when you're speaking to, heads of admission, heads of school. Interview them as well. I see it as an interview. If I'm going to be giving you my children to help me raise and teach them, I need to know what your visions and mission is, what your principle, what your ethos is in the school. So it should be more of a conversation than just, going for what's easy. And the last thing that I'll mention, which I know Mark will also really get into, is avoid the rush. Sometimes parents wait a little bit too late. And by the time they start looking for a specific school, at whatever stage it is, sometimes it's so late in the game that parents tend to pick the school that has availability for their child versus the best school you would have wanted if you had the time to actually do all your research and application process. So that's just like a quick summary.
All right. And last week I did mention that the conversation about where your child should go to school is of utmost importance, because when we talk about some of the agents of socialization, the education that your child is getting, the people that you're going to be surrounding your children with are super important, because these are the individuals that will actually build your child's character moving forward. Because as parents, you're not the only port of influence when it comes to your children. So where they go to school is very important. And that's the reason why we are paying a lot of attention to this topic in particular. All right, just getting further into this conversation, I would like for Mark to chime in on this one, to get into some of the things that parents should know when picking a school for their kids, especially when they're trying to pick secondary school or boarding schools or sixth form schools. I want to know, because it was so much of a culture in Nigeria where a lot of parents would rather their kids finish their secondary school in Nigeria, and then for their higher education, for their university, they would like their kids to go abroad. For a lot of people, they like their kids to go to the UK. But in your years of experience and looking at what has been going on in recent times, has there been an increase or decrease when it comes to parents picking boarding schools or secondary schools for their children, as opposed to what has been obtainable for so many years, which was particularly universities?
That's a really great question, Ify, and I've been very pleased to be working with Nigerian families for 13 years and entering my 14th year, and I've seen a lot of changes over that time. But certainly British boarding schools are more popular from Nigerian and West African families than ever before. And there's about 1,500 pupils from Nigeria alone studying in British boarding schools. And so that's what my experience on that. And I think what families are looking for, I wrote an MBA thesis on this a few years ago, and how parents choose an independent school. And it reminds me of showing a parent from Nigeria around a girls' school last week. And they were really welcomed by the first impressions they got. There was a tea waiting for them, and cake as well. And it was a bit like a party. But it just felt they'd been travelling a few hours. And the mother said to me, well, if they give that kind of welcome to me, then they will give that kind of welcome to my daughters when they join this school. The other thing, to talk about first impressions, is really important to meet other Nigerian pupils on your tour, or to ask to meet them at the school, because you can ask them, how do you find the school? How do you fit in? What are the pros? What's the cons? What's the food like? More importantly, is it spicy enough for the Nigerian palate? And those kind of questions. And on that tour last week, we met a girl called Blossom, and she was a fantastic tour guide. She's from the Delta State, and she is destined to be head girl and go on to fantastic universities. And she really gave a fantastic impression of the school. So I think in terms of what to look for first, it's first impressions, and it's how they're going to look after me, how they're going to look after my sons and daughters.
All right, Yetty, just writing off of some of the things that Mark has said as regards the first impression and all that, because we know that you, of course, run LagosMums. Have you been asked a lot of questions in recent times about, taking your kids to boarding school or taking your kids abroad to finish their secondary school, as opposed to waiting? Sometimes parents wonder, should I wait for my kids to finish here, or should I take them to the UK or maybe the US, let them get acclimatized with, the school culture before then they get into the university system? Have you been asked these questions, in recent times?
Yeah, I always say that knowledge is power. And because I've been running LagosMums for so many years, honestly, Mark and we met, I think it's been 5 years now, maybe 5 or 6 years. Yeah. And wow. I met him because, I came across an exhibition, because he runs these annual exhibitions in Nigeria at least 2 or 3 times a year, where he brings a lot of schools to Nigeria so that parents get to actually interact with with the school owners and admissions officers one-on-one. And I remember many years ago when I attended one of them, my children were much younger. I wasn't even thinking about, secondary school or not abroad. I just believe that knowledge is power. It's important to know what's going on. It's important to speak to people, even if you don't think it's time for you. So one of the things that's definitely happened is there's an increase in conversations around choosing the right school, no matter where you live. So even questions around choosing the right school, even in Lagos, I'm having much more of that kind of conversations with parents. And I think it's because with what we do with LagosMums and even parenting today, we're trying to talk about intentional parenting, think ahead, plan ahead, have a vision of the adult you're raising, and then work backwards to make sure you're making the right decisions along the way. And education is very important. So locally, people are asking more questions for sure. And internationally as well, people are definitely asking more questions, which is why I work very closely with Mark, because he has such experience. He mentioned he's been working with West African families for 14 years. So he really has the wealth of information to ask you the right questions as a family and then help you identify the schools that would fit that. So the questions are increasing. The travel is increasing. We're having more and more children going abroad. Unfortunately, it's also a sign of, what's going on in Nigeria as well, which is why we're having a lot of. So let's keep that in mind. So it's unfortunate and fortunate at the same time. Does that make sense?
Exactly. Yes.
It's like a bittersweet situation. But if you're going to make that decision, you want to make sure you do it the right way and get the right information. Yeah.
Yeah, I think another point I'd make is that historically, a lot of families have sent their children to the UK for sixth form, for A-levels or the International Baccalaureate. But that's throwing them in the deep end in terms of there's very pressured academic studies for 2 years to prepare for university, and Nigerians are capable and very strong at getting into top universities. But I'd encourage families, if they can, to send their children earlier to get acclimatised to the UK, to benefit from the all-round education and academic excellence that British boarding schools offer, and then prepare with IGCSEs and GCSEs, and then progress to A-levels. It makes a transition easier to best universities. And in terms of the numbers, just to add that the inquiries and numbers of students I'm dealing with has doubled in the last 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And particularly since the autumn. And I think one of the reasons is that the UK has ridden the pandemic in terms of continuity of education with schools. And that's been a major factor. And also parents choose fantastic schools for their children to develop all-round education.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. It's a really good point that, sometimes, when you send them just to come and do A-levels here, there is some adjustment to make. There's a lot of things. In fact, we could have a whole show on relocation, because just the adjustment to living in a different country, the way lessons are taught, how teachers, what's the word I'm looking for? Interact with children sometimes is different. So for some parents, it might be helpful to consider sending your child a few years earlier if you can. So Mark, could you speak about some of the very, the more natural or the good times for children to fit into schools in the UK? Because it's important you don't bring them at year 10 or something awkward like that. So could you speak a little bit to that?
Yes, the natural entry points are year 7 at age 11, or year 9 at age 13, or sixth form at age 16 for 2 years. And that's to get into the A-level programme at 16, or the GCSE programme, which starts in year 9 for many schools, or year 7 for prep school or senior school. So it's not too early. The other point I'd make is it's not too soon to start as well, because many schools are full up years ahead. One family I've been liaising with today, I've been working with for 4 years to gain entry to a top boarding school. And they're still in the round of interviews and things to start this September. So it's never too soon to start.
Just speaking about our culture in Nigeria, for instance, and Yetty, I would like for you to speak on that as well. So Mark, in Nigeria, we're very particular about discipline. And one of the points of conversation when parents are thinking about taking their kids abroad, some of the things that they wonder is, will my child be as disciplined as I would like her or him to be, if he was in Nigeria, for instance, where I'm able to pay attention to him, where, we don't take certain things lightly, so to speak, or them going abroad, would it be a thing where the teachers or the school authorities will be very lenient when my kids maybe might engage in certain things that might be wrong? So a lot of times parents wonder, should I not, or should I wait till my kids are mature enough, when they're getting into university, so that they know what or what not to engage in. So if parents have that as a worry, what would you say in response to that as regards the level of discipline that their kids will get, if they get into boarding school or get into the educational system before university in the UK?
Yeah, that comes back to, that's a really great question, and a question I answer every single day and night of my life. And you put your finger on the question, obviously. The answer really is, work with a good educational consultant who knows the schools inside out and has a good relationship with the school and will develop a relationship with the parents. The second thing is, the educational consultant will be able to advise on the school which has the right ethos, values and chemistry, what the parents are looking for. The third point is that it's not just about moral behaviour and discipline, but it's actually about communication with parents. And I find the schools that I work with that are most popular have a real partnership between school, parents, teachers and students who are regularly in touch. And in fact, this morning I was in touch with a school and a parent. A student joined in September, and we were just checking how they're getting on with their chemistry, and we're giving feedback, and generally she's settling in really well. And that's where an agent comes in as well, in terms of holding your hand through the whole education process rather than just leaving you when you join a school. This afternoon I've got another meeting with the school pupil and the tutors just to check on the progress and make sure it's going ahead. So the question can be answered in two ways, really. It's ensuring you choose a school which has got the same moral compass as you. The second point is that their communication is faultless. It's not just a termly report at the end of term, but it's regular communication. And actually some schools I work with do weekly reports and weekly tests, and I know parents love that. The students don't like that so much, but they end up getting better results as a result.
Yeah. It's a really good point.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, carry on, Yetty.
Yes, and as you were saying, in terms of discipline, and I think, like Mark said, it's really important that we've talked about that before on this show as well, right? About positive discipline. We can't see discipline is not about punitive. It's not about you do what I say, when I say it, how I say it, but about a total picture of raising a well-rounded individual, and that means that child has agency to make the right decisions and is in an enabling environment, both at home and at school, to make sure that child is being, nurtured into their best person possible. And so with discipline, like Mark said, the only thing I guess I would add is just that parents themselves need to rethink what discipline is. And discipline is not necessarily tied to your geography, right? So just keeping that in mind, that it's not about geography, it's about what you want, and making sure that what you choose in terms of your school environment and home environment are going to add to that child's learning process.
A friend of mine wrote a PhD thesis on why parents from Nigeria choose an independent school in the UK. And the first point, she said, safety and security, because the students are so well looked after in a boarding environment. There's so many staff, pastoral care is fantastic, and the communication is brilliant. And so if parents are concerned, they should visit, talk to agents such as myself, and then ask some questions, and I know they'll be very reassured as well.
All right, fantastic. Now, before we, slowly wind down on the show today, Mark, please share more things that parents need to bear in mind while picking a boarding school for their children abroad.
Yeah, well, I think that we covered first impressions, and I think another couple of points I'd like to make is results. A lot of families just go down the league table position and say, well, we can't get into the number one, but maybe we'll try and get into number two. Well, league tables results show selective schools. So they select the brightest of pupils, and they get, obviously, great results. What I'm more keen on is to help families get into schools with higher value-added marks, whereas the teachers have to work hard, the parents have to work hard, the students have to work hard, and they exceed their expected grades or their predicted grades. So don't just go on the league table position, really find out more about the school and where will the child get the best support. The second question in terms of what to look for is boarding. Drill in a little bit further with schools about boarding numbers at weekends, diversity of the boarding community. And most schools have dropped exit or leave out weekends, but certainly make sure you ask about that as well. And they run lots of activities and clubs and societies and trips at the weekend, and make sure that you're going to school which doesn't everyone leave at the weekend, but it's a full and active programme at the weekend. And I know a lot of the schools I work with have very active programmes at the weekend as well.
All right. It's 12:56. If you are listening, please feel free to join the conversation. If you'd like to ask any questions whatsoever, please feel free to do that. You can call us up 0809 234 5913. 0809 222 0913. 01515 0913. 015151913. We are talking about picking a school for your children, particularly a boarding school in the UK. And we have Mark Brooks, who's an educational consultant, and Yetty Williams, who is the CEO of LagosMums. You can send a WhatsApp message to 0809 234-5913 or tweet at LagosFolks913 using the hashtag parenting today. All right, Yetty, before we wrap up, would you like to, mention any other thing?
Yeah, so what I wanted to say was, in addition to all the things Mark has said today, one thing parents need to get comfortable with is, getting into this conversation and getting the knowledge you need, even way before you think you might ever need it. But it's better to have information 3, 4, 5 years in advance versus maybe when your child needs to go next year. And that's one thing that Mark does really well. So I think I'll let him talk about that because he actually has a series of webinars coming up where parents can really get their teeth into understanding the different schools, what they offer, and get to talk to the heads of admissions as well, which is coming up next week. So Mark, do you want to talk about that?
Yes, and just to make a final point that the UK boarding schools welcome Nigerian pupils because they're hardworking, talented at so many areas such as sport and co-curricular activities, and they quickly rise to become leaders in their schools and prefects and head boys and head girls, which is fantastic. Credit to parenting in Nigeria. And we've been running many events, live events in Lagos for many years. They're online at the moment. And next week, we're running 3 webinars from 12 till 1 West Africa time on the 1st, 2nd and 3rd of February. And we've got 16 schools taking part with 5-minute presentations from each head. And these are supported by the Department for International Trade. And if anyone wants more details, then go to my website, which is www.markbrookseducation.com. That's www.markbrookseducation.com.
All right, and for those who are listening, the Brooks is BROOKS. So Mark Brooks, MARKBROOKS. All right, Mark, thank you so much. We have learned a whole lot, a very enlightening session with you. And Yetty, always a pleasure having conversation with you about parenting today. Before saying goodbye, Yetty, any words?
Yes, thanks, Ify. This was a great one. Education is really, really, really important. As always, you can find me on LagosMums.com, where we have a lot of resources on parenting, and on social media, follow us at LagosMums on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram with details about the upcoming, educational webinars that Mark is mentioning. We have all of that as well on our platform, so you can reach out to us at LagosMums or directly to Mark to get more information. Thank you, Ify.
All right, Mark, before you leave, there's a question that just came in. So someone's asking. She's saying, please, I would like to ask, I would be going to England to study very soon. Can I take my little daughter along to study also?
Yes, that's a great question. And that's a visa question. And there are visa agencies that I work with. And certainly we do help families who come to study nursing or study at university, and they've moved their family over. In fact, I was just talking to a family last night from Rwanda who are bringing their 3 children over to London, and we're talking exactly the same thing. So anything is possible if you're talking to the right educational consultant who can help you with that.
All right, please, Mark, share your website once again in case she wants to reach out to you.
So it's markbrookseducation.com. That's MARKBROOKS education.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much once again. Lovely having you both on the show as always. If you're listening, Parenting Today comes up Thursday, 12:30. Make it a date with us. Yetty, I guess next week.
Next week.
Yes, another conversation on parenting.
Indeed. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Ify.
Thank you.
Thanks, Yetty. That's brilliant.
All right. Thank you to everyone who was a part of the show for today.